Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the dirt-streaked, back-breaking, and utterly thankless life of a medieval peasant's slave. The air is heavy with the smell of damp hay, wood smoke, and unwashed bodies. You're on your knees in a dimly lit hovel, scrubbing a rough-hewn floor with icy water that seeps through your fingers. The low ceiling presses down, smoke stings your eyes, and every muscle in your body aches from chores that never ever end. Outside, the wind cuts through the village like a blade carrying the distant sound of a lord's horse approaching someone who might decide your fate in the blink of an eye. You think you'll last a day in this life, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, post your location and your local time in the comments so I can picture exactly where you're listening from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The cockcrow is not your alarm. It is your summons. Even before the first hint of dawn, you're on your feet, fumbling in near darkness, as you pull on the same coarse tunic you slept in. Your master's manor looms in the distance, its silhouette black against the paling sky. There's no breakfast waiting for you, only a bucket of cold water to splash on your face and a stale crust to gnaw on as you trudge to the fields. Your breath clouds in the air, and your bare feet, toughened by years of abuse, crunch through frost-stiff earth. Your tasks have no end, hauling water from the stream, tending to livestock, repairing fences, digging ditches, weeding the Lord's crops before your own. The Lord's wheat gets the best care, the richest soil, the strongest seed. Your family's plot, if you're lucky enough to have one, gets what's left, and only after your master's demands are met. And there's no clocking out. The only measure of time is the sun crawling across the sky and the ache in your spine. You're not paid in coins. Your wage is survival, a corner of a shack to sleep in, a few scraps of food, and the privilege of not being whipped or thrown into the stocks. And even that survival is precarious. If the Lord decides he wants more from you, more days in the field, more work done faster, you obey. Refusal isn't an option. It's an insult that could see you beaten, humiliated, or cast out entirely. Every movement is done under watchful eyes. The bailiff, a man only slightly better off than you, walks the furrows with a stick in hand, ready to rap the knuckles of anyone who slows. His voice cuts through the clatter of work orders, barked punishments, promised. You keep your head down because here, eye contact with someone above your station can be taken as defiance. And while the fields are where you'll spend most of your daylight hours, the manor's inner demands pull you indoors just as the sun begins to set. You haul firewood polish boots caked with mud. You'll never be allowed to track across the floors and scrub pewter plates until your fingers are raw. There's no candlelight for you, those belong to the Lord's table. You work by the orange flicker of the hearth, or by moonlight spilling through a window you're never meant to gaze out of. At night, you return to the slaves' quarters, a damp, drafty outbuilding with straw on the floor and the sound of rats skittering overhead. The smell of sweat, mold, and smoke clings to you no matter how much you try to wash in the icy stream. And tomorrow it will all begin again, identical to today and to the day before, stretching into an endless chain of servitude. But that's only the surface. What you can't yet see are the deeper traps, the law's customs, and whispered expectations that bind you tighter than any rope. You're about to find out that being a medieval peasant's slave is more than exhausting. It's a life where even your thoughts feel like they belong to someone else. You learn quickly that your body is not really yours. It is a tool owned and directed by the one who holds your fate in his ink-stained hands. The Lord's steward keeps a ledger, and in it your name is written alongside a list of duties and obligations. It is not just your back that bends for the plow, it is your will. If the steward marks a task, it will be done no matter how impossible it seems, no matter if the sky splits open with rain or the ground is frozen solid. The seasons decide the rhythm of your slavery, but they never bring relief. In spring, you're up to your knees in cold mud, guiding the heavy plow while oxen strain in front of you. Your hands bleed from gripping the rough wooden handles, and your breath catches in the damp chill. Summer scorches your skin, the sun hammering down until the sweat burns your eyes, and the air shimmers over the fields. In autumn, you scythe through endless stalks until your arms throb, and then you haul the sheaves into the Lord's granary, knowing your own family will receive only a pitiful share. Winter offers no rest. It is for mending fences, chopping wood, and caring for the Lord's livestock in the biting wind. The land owns you in every season, and through it, so does the man who owns the land. Even moments that should be yours are claimed. Feast days might seem like a reprieve, but they are just another stage for your servitude. You stand in the shadows at the edges of the great hall, ready to fetch wine or clear plates, while the Lord and his guests feast on roasted meats and honeyed cakes. You watch the jugglers and hear the laughter, but you are not part of it. When the night ends, it is you who scrapes the grease from the platters, scrubs the rush-covered floors, and stokes the fire so it will be warm for your betters come morning. And then there are the dues, the constant toll on whatever small gains you make. A portion of any grain you grow, any eggs your hens lay, even the wool from your sheep is owed to the manor. If your wife weaves a length of cloth, a tax is due. If you catch fish in the stream, the steward will want his share. Sometimes it feels as if even the air in your lungs should be tithed. Worse still is the knowledge that your life can be shifted like a pawn on a board. The Lord can lend you out to another estate, trade you for a pair of hunting dogs, or assign you to tasks far from home with no warning. You can wake one morning expecting to hoe turnips in your familiar field, and by midday find yourself sent to repair the roof of a distant outbuilding you've never seen before. Each order comes without explanation, and you obey without question, because questions invite suspicion, and suspicion invites punishment. You've also learned that survival isn't just about keeping your head down, it's about knowing when to make yourself invisible. There are days when the Lord rides out in a foul mood, when a failed hunt or a loss at dice leaves him looking for someone to take the sting. And in those moments, the nearest slave can become the target of his wrath. A whip is faster than an explanation. Night should be your refuge, but it rarely is. Sometimes you're summoned after dark, perhaps to fetch water for the cook, or to bring a message across the cold, silent fields to another farmstead. The manor's corridors at night are shadowed and silent except for the creak of the floorboards under your bare feet. You pass under tapestries that tell stories of battles and saints, reminders of a world you don't belong to, except as an unnamed figure in the background. And always you feel the unspoken weight of something deeper, the fact that in this place there is no after. You will not earn your freedom through hard work. You will not rise to become a tenant farmer or own a piece of land. Your children will inherit your station just as surely as they inherit the color of your eyes or the bend of your nose. They will grow up watching you bow your head and scrape the mud from your master's boots, and one day they will bow their own heads the same way. Still, you keep moving because there is no other choice. Tomorrow, there will be more to carry, more to scrub, more to sew. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you start to wonder, not for the first time, if the greatest cruelty of being a medieval peasant slave isn't the work itself, but the slow erosion of the part of you that remembers what freedom might have felt like. Morning comes like a thief stealing away the only moments when your body lies still. The rooster's crow cuts through the darkness, but you're already half awake, curled on a bed of straw that smells faintly of damp earth and animal musk. You push yourself upright, every joint stiff, and you feel the grit of yesterday's labor still clinging to your skin. The embers in the small hearth have died, leaving the air so cold that your breath fogs before your face. Before you can even think of eating, you're outside with a wooden yoke balanced across your shoulders, trudging toward the stream. The buckets knock against your knees as you walk, splashing icy water down your legs. The sun is still hiding behind a veil of mist, and your fingers ache from the chill. By the time you return, the weight has dug deep grooves into your collarbones. You pour the water into the barrels by the kitchen, and the cook barely nods in thanks before barking at you to chop firewood. There is a strange rhythm to the tasks here, an endless loop that doesn't allow your mind to rest. Wood to chop fires, to tend pots, to scrub animals, to feed tools, to mend grain, to grind. If the Lord is traveling, there are carts to load. If guests are expected, there are rushes to sweep from the great hall and replace with fresh ones that still smell of meadow grass. And yet none of this work is truly yours. Everything you touch will end up serving someone else's comfort, someone else's table, someone else's life. By mid-morning, you're in the fields, the wet grass soaking your feet. You stoop low, pulling weeds from between rows of tender shoots, your back already screaming. The bailiff passes by on his rounds, tapping his stick against his palm, his eyes scanning for any sign of slowness. The threat doesn't have to be spoken. You've seen enough welts on others' backs to know what happens when someone lingers too long over their work. Around midday, there's a short pause, but it's hardly a rest. You huddle in the thin shade of a tree, gnawing at a hard lump of bread and sipping from a wooden flask of watered ale. The bread scratches your throat. The ale is sour. The others sit in silence, too tired to speak, their eyes downcast. Somewhere far off, you hear laughter, probably from the manor, where the Lord's family dines on meat pies and fresh fruits. You swallow the bitterness along with the bread and return to the rows. In the afternoon, the tasks change, but the pace does not. You're sent to help repair a section of fencing along the pasture. The wood is rough, the nails bent, the hammer heavy. Each strike sends a jolt up your arm. When it's done, the steward orders you to drive the sheep into the pen, and you find yourself chasing stubborn animals under the hot glare of the sun. They don't understand rank or duty. They just run where they please, and your frustration builds as you herd them back again and again. And then, without warning, the work shifts to something entirely different, hauling sacks of grain to the mill. The sacks are almost as heavy as you, the coarse fabric scraping your skin raw. The miller barely looks at you as you stagger under the load, his face dusted white with flour. You drop the sack where he points your chest, heaving sweat soaking through your tunic. There's no praise, no word of relief, just another sack to lift. By the time the sun dips toward the horizon, you're filthy, drenched, and aching. But your day isn't over. Back at the manor, you're assigned to kitchen duty, scrubbing greasy pans in water gone cloudy and gray. The smell clings to your hands even after you rinse them in the stream. You watch as the scraps from the Lord's table, bones, gnawed, clean crusts of bread smeared with gravy are tossed into a bucket. Some will go to the dogs. Others might end up in your own meager supper, boiled into a thin, tasteless stew. Night falls slowly, shadows stretching across the yard. But you're still working, sweeping the dirt from the hall, stacking firewood near the hearth, mending a tear in one of the Lord's cloaks by lamplight. Your eyes sting, your shoulders slump, and every movement feels heavier than the last. At last you're dismissed, and you shuffle back to your quarters. The air inside is thick and still, the straw bedding slightly damp. You lie down staring at the low ceiling, your ears ringing with the echoes of the day's orders. Sleep comes, but it is thin and restless. You dream of running fields rolling out before you, the wind cool and free on your face, but you always wake just before you reach the horizon. And in the morning it will begin again, as though your dream never happened. The fields will still need tilling, the buckets still need carrying, and the weight of servitude will still press against your spine like an unshakable shadow. There's a strange truth you've begun to realize out here. Time is measured not by clocks, but by the repetition of pain. The same aches bloom in the same muscles at the same hour each day. You can predict when your shoulders will burn, when your hands will cramp, when the ache in your lower back will become a dull, relentless throb. The days blend together until even the seasons seem to lose their edges. This morning begins with fog lying thick over the fields, swallowing sound and light. You move through it like a ghost, the yoke biting into your collarbones as you carry the first buckets of water. The village is quiet, except for the bleating of sheep in the distance and the dull thud of your own footsteps. Your breath hangs in the air, and your skin is already damp from the mist. By the time you reach the manor's yard, the fog is thinning, and the steward is waiting. He has a list in his hand, the ink smudged but still legible. Repair the barn roof, move stones from the lower field, spread manure in the orchard. You're not alone. 3 other slaves stand beside you, heads bowed. The steward doesn't look at you when he speaks. He looks past you, as if you are just another piece of equipment that needs directing. The barn roof is a hazard in itself. You climb the ladder with a bundle of wooden shingles tied to your back, your fingers numb from gripping the rungs. The wind picks up as you reach the top, tugging at your tunic seat and threatening to unbalance you. Below, the yard seems unnervingly far away. You crouch low, hammer in hand, and begin to work, each strike of the nail echoing in your ears. Your knees protest, your shoulders scream, but you keep going until the steward calls you down. Then comes the stone moving, hauling heavy, jagged rocks from one side of the lower field to the other. The ground is uneven, and more than once you stumble, scraping your shins. The stones bite into your palms, even through the rough cloth you've wrapped around them. You tell yourself you'll get used to it, but the truth is, you never do. Pain remains pain no matter how often it visits. The manure spreading is worse. You shovel it from the cart into the orchard rows, the smell clinging to your hair and clothes. Flies swarm around your head, landing on your face, buzzing in your ears. You try not to breathe too deeply, but the stench seeps in anyway, coating your throat. This is the task no one wants, but no one can refuse. By midday, you're sent to the well to fetch water for the kitchen. Inside, the cooks are preparing the evening feast for the Lord's guests: roasted fowl, fresh bread, spiced wine. The aromas make your stomach twist with hunger, but you know better than to linger. One of the scullions thrusts a bucket into your hands and gestures toward the door. The afternoon is spent in the fields, again driving crows away from the newly sown seeds. You wave your arms, shout, and throw stones, the sun beating down on your neck. It's mindless work, but it must be done, and the bailiff checks on you twice to make sure you're not resting in the shade. The hours drag until your skin feels baked and your mouth is dry. When the sun finally dips low, you're sent to help prepare the guest chambers, laying out clean rushes, setting pitchers of water on the washstands, and smoothing the linen sheets that will never touch your skin. The rooms smell faintly of lavender and beeswax, a softness that feels almost foreign after a day of sweat, mud, and manure. You catch yourself staring at the carved bedposts and the heavy curtains, wondering what it would be like to close yourself inside and sleep without the cold nipping at your toes. But you don't linger. There's always another task waiting. The evening ends with more cleaning scrubbing the wooden floors of the hall until your knees ache and your hands are raw. The Lord's guests are laughing somewhere nearby, their voices echoing through the corridors. The sound is muffled but clear enough for you to hear the clink of goblets and the swell of a lute. You work in the shadows, invisible until the steward waves you away. Back in the slaves' quarters, you collapse onto your straw bed, the smell of the day still clinging to you. You can hear the wind outside rattling the shutters and the faint hum of insects in the dark. You close your eyes, but your mind doesn't rest. It replays the steward's list, the ache of the ladder under your knees, the scrape of stone against your skin. Tomorrow will be the same. The tasks may change shape, but the weight will not lift. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet truth gnaws at you. This isn't just your life for now. It's your life forever. No matter how much you work, how much you endure, the world will never open for you. It will keep you in its grip until your hands can no longer hold the tools, and even then, you'll owe it whatever you have left to give. The first sound you hear is not the rooster this time, but the sharp rap of the steward's stick against the doorframe. It's still dark, the stars faint above the horizon, and yet the day has already claimed you. You roll from the straw bed, your knees stiff, your back tight, the cold floor biting at your bare feet. Outside, the air feels wet with dew clinging to your skin as you shuffle toward the yard where the others are already gathering. Today's orders come quickly, there's no room for idle chatter. The Lord wants the north field cleared of stones before planting the moat's edges reinforced with fresh earth and a wagon of firewood delivered to the village blacksmith. The tasks are split among you, and before you know it, you're bent over in the north field, fingers digging into the soil to wrench out rocks that seem to breed overnight. Some are small enough to toss into the wheelbarrow with one hand, but others require heaving with your whole body until your muscles burn and your breath comes in short, sharp gasps. The work on the moat is worse. The earth along the edges is soft from recent rain, and it clings to your boots in heavy clumps as you shovel it into place. The stench of stagnant water rises with each movement, the surface broken only by the ripple of frogs or the sudden dart of a rat across the shallows. You try to focus on the rhythm, dig, lift, drop, but the smell gets into your nose and refuses to leave. By mid-morning, you're hitched to the wagon like an animal pulling the load of firewood toward the blacksmith's forge in the village. The road is rutted and uneven, and the wood shifts with each bump, threatening to tumble out. Your shoulders strain with the weight, your palms slip on the rough rope, and the sun climbs higher with no cloud to shield you. By the time you reach the forge, your tunic is plastered to your skin with sweat. The blacksmith nods a curt thanks and immediately starts stacking the wood as if you're just another delivery boy he's seen 100 times before. On the way back, the steward intercepts you with new instructions: fetch water for the cattle in the upper pasture. The buckets are heavy, the climb steep, and the cattle impatient. One nudges you hard with its head, almost knocking you off your feet. You mutter under your breath, but you keep working. The animals don't care if you're tired, and neither does the steward. There's no proper midday meal, just a quick stop to gnaw at yesterday's bread and sip from your flask. You sit in the dirt, watching ants crawl over your boot, and think about nothing at all, because thinking takes energy you don't have. Then it's back to the moat, back to the wheelbarrows, back to the endless moving of earth from one place to another. By late afternoon, the sky begins to darken, the clouds rolling in thick and low. The first drops of rain sting your skin cold and sharp, but there's no pause. The steward barks that the work must be finished before nightfall. The mud turns slick beneath your feet, and you slip more than once, catching yourself on the shovel's handle. The rain seeps through your clothes until you're soaked the weight of the fabric, dragging at your limbs. When the task is finally done, the rain has turned the yard into a churned mess of mud and puddles. You're sent to the stables to help muck out the stalls, another job that soaks your hands in filth. The horses shift restlessly, their hooves thudding against the boards, their warm breath puffing in the dim light. You shovel straw and manure into heaps, your arms aching with each lift. Only when the last stall is clean are you allowed to leave. The rain hasn't stopped, and by the time you reach your quarters, you're shivering so hard that your teeth chatter. The damp straw offers no comfort. It smells musty, and it sticks to your skin. You curl into yourself, pulling your thin blanket tight, but warmth is slow to return. As you close your eyes, you realize that you've begun to measure life not in days or seasons, but in tasks. Stone hauling days, moat shoveling days, firewood hauling days. And all of them end the same way, with your body spent, your spirit dulled, and the knowledge that tomorrow will simply be another variation of the same relentless grind. The rain hasn't stopped by the time dawn presses its cold fingers through the cracks in the shutters. You wake to the steady patter on the roof and the smell of damp earth rising from the floor. The air in the quarters is thick with moisture. Your blanket feels clammy, and your hair is plastered to your head. You stand joints protesting and step outside into the gray morning. The yard is a maze of puddles, and the mud pulls at your boots with each step. The steward is already there, his hood drawn low against the drizzle. His orders are brisk, the Lord's hunting party is returning early, and preparations must be made. That means sweeping the great hall, laying fresh rushes, polishing the pewter, and making sure the fire in the hearth burns high and steady. You're assigned to the rushes. The old lair is damp and foul-matted with food scraps, dirt, and things you'd rather not name. You work with a wooden rake, pulling the mess into piles that release a sour stench into the air. Once the floor is bare, you haul in bundles of new rushes from the storeroom, scattering them evenly until the room smells faintly of meadow instead of rot. From there, you're sent to the kitchens to turn the spit. A whole boar turns slowly over the flames, its skin crackling fat dripping into the fire and sending up bursts of heat that sting your face. The work is simple but relentless. Your arm never stops moving. Your eyes never leave the meat. The cook occasionally barks at you to turn it faster, slower, lift the handle, lower it again. The heat soaks into your bones and sweat runs down your spine, but you dare not complain. When the hunting party arrives, the hall fills with noise, boots clattering, voices, booming hounds barking. You melt into the background, moving quickly to refill cups, fetch platters, and clear away bones. The Lord is in high spirits, telling tales of the hunt, his laughter carrying above the din. The guests feast on roasted meat, cheese, and fresh bread. You pass within arm's reach of the table again and again, but you never taste a bite. By afternoon, the party moves to the yard to show off the day's catch. Deer carcasses are hung for skinning, and you're ordered to assist. The smell is sharp, metallic, and heavy in the rain-damp air. You hold the animal steady while the huntsman works the knife, moving in practiced arcs. Blood seeps into the mud, mixing with the puddles until the ground is streaked red. Your stomach churns, but you keep your face still. When the carcasses are hung in the smokehouse, you're given another task, scrubbing the hunting gear. The saddles are slick with rain and sweat, the bridles stiff with mud. You work the leather with oil until it shines your fingers, aching from the repetitive motion. The hounds circle restlessly, their wet fur smelling of forest and rain. One shoves its nose into your side, searching for scraps, but you have none to give. As dusk settles, the rain finally eases, but the yard is a swamp. You're sent to help carry firewood to the guest chambers, the logs heavy and slick. Your boots squelch with every step, and the damp air seeps into your lungs. By the time you finish, the steward's voice is softer, but his eyes are sharp. Tomorrow the fields, he says, as if it were a promise. Back in your quarters, you strip off your wet tunic and hang it near the hearth, though you know it won't be dry by morning. The straw bed is still damp and you lie on it fully clothed, chasing what little warmth you can. Your hands smell faintly of smoke and leather, and you can still hear the laughter from the hall, drifting faintly through the rain. You realize then that days like this, when the work is varied, when you're inside as much as outside, are supposed to be easier. But they still take the same from you, your strength, your time, your sense of self. Even the moments that seem different are just another shade of the same servitude. And as your eyes close, you wonder whether the rain will return tomorrow, and whether it even matters. For here, under the Lord's eye, every day is already spoken for before you wake. The air is crisp this morning, the rain finally gone, but the dampness it left behind clings to everything. The sky is pale, streaked with wisps of cloud, and the ground is still soft under your boots. You step outside and smell the faint sweetness of earth that has been turned and soaked. It might be a pleasant morning for someone else. For you, it means only one thing: the fields will demand twice the labor after days of being left alone. The steward is waiting near the barn, a leather strap in his hand that he smacks idly against his palm. "We're planting the south field," he says, his tone flat. "You know the south field, it's larger than the others, lying just beyond the bend in the stream, and its soil is heavy after a rain. The tools are already laid out: heavy wooden plows, iron-tipped hoes, baskets of seed. The oxen snort and shift in their harnesses, their breath steaming in the cool air. You take your place behind the plow. The handle is rough against your palms, the wood worn smooth in places by years of hands just like yours. The oxen lurch forward, and the blade bites into the wet soil, cutting a furrow as you lean your full weight into it. The ground resists, sucking at your boots, jolting your arms when the blade hits a hidden stone. You keep your eyes on the line ahead, your breath rising in sharp clouds, the muscles in your legs straining with each step. Once the furrows are cut, the seed baskets are passed around. You scoop the grain into your hand and scatter it in practiced arcs, your fingers moving automatically. There's no talking in the field, just the sound of boots squelching in the soil and the faint hiss of seed falling onto earth. Behind you, others follow with hoes covering the grain, with clods of dirt pressing it down. The work stretches into midday, and the sun climbs higher, burning away the last of the morning's chill. Sweat trickles down your back, soaking into your tunic, and the air hums faintly with the buzzing of flies drawn to the damp ground. When a brief rest is called, you sink onto a low stone wall, your legs trembling, your mouth dry. The bread you brought is hard enough to crack a tooth, but you chew it anyway, washing it down with a few swallows of warm ale. After the break, the steward assigns you to the irrigation ditch. The water from the stream must be diverted to feed the newly planted rows, and the channels are clogged with silt from the recent rain. You wade in the mud, sucking at your ankles, and start digging. The shovel's edge cuts into the muck with a dull, sticky sound, and each load you lift seems to weigh more than the last. The water seeps around your boots, cold at first, but soon warming to the temperature of your skin, and you work until your arms feel like lead. By late afternoon, the planting is done, and you're sent to the edge of the pasture to help mend a broken fence. The splintered wood is rough under your hands, and more than once you feel it catch on your skin. You hold the posts steady while another slave drives nails, the hammer blows ringing in your ears. Each time the wood shifts under pressure, you brace it with your whole body, the strain biting into your shoulders. As the sun sinks low, the sky turns gold, and for a moment the fields look almost peaceful, rows of dark soil stretching into the distance, the stream glinting in the light. But the beauty feels distant, like something you're not meant to touch. You know the rose will demand weeding, watering, and guarding in the days to come. Even the things you help create will never belong to you. When you return to the manor, the work doesn't end. You're ordered to sweep the yard clear of leaves that have blown in from the orchard. The broom is crude, the bristles worn, and the work sends dust into your nose and eyes. Your shoulders ache from the day, and each stroke feels heavier than the last. Only when darkness settles are you dismissed. You trudge back to the quarters, the smell of freshly turned earth still in your hair, your hands caked with soil. You lie down without washing, too tired to move your mind. Empty except for the rhythm of the plow, the weight of the seed in your palm, the dull ache that now seems as permanent as your shadow. Somewhere beyond the walls, the newly planted seeds are resting in the soil, waiting for the right combination of sun and rain to bring them to life. But you know that when they sprout, it won't be you who reaps their full harvest. You'll be there in the fields again, bending your back, offering your labor to someone else's gain, bound to the cycle as tightly as the furrows are bound to the earth. The morning begins with a biting wind that makes your eyes water before you've even taken 10 steps outside. The sky is clear, a hard, cold blue, and the ground is stiff underfoot. You're barely awake when the steward calls for you, his voice sharp, carrying across the yard. Today the orders come with no preamble. The Lord wants the eastern pasture cleared of weeds and brambles before the livestock is moved there. The tools are crude, a rusted sickle with a splintering handle, a wooden rake missing half its teeth. You start at the edge of the pasture where the thorns are thick, their twisted branches catching at your clothes. The sickle slices through with a harsh tearing sound, but the work is slow. Every swing leaves your arm aching, and more than once the thorns bite into your skin, leaving thin red scratches that sting in the cold air. The wind steals the warmth from your hands, and even gripping the handle becomes a challenge. By mid-morning, your back is bent nearly double as you drag the rake across the uneven ground, pulling up dead grass and roots. The sun is bright, but offers no heat. The brambles seem endless, and each step forward reveals more knots of thorn and weed. The other slaves work silently alongside you, their heads down, their movements mechanical. No one speaks unless the steward addresses them. When a short break is allowed, you sink onto a stump, sucking in the cold air until it burns your throat. You take a sip from your flask, the water icy against your teeth, and tear off a piece of stale bread. It crumbles in your hands, but you eat it anyway, chewing slowly to make it last. The view from the pasture stretches wide fields and forest under the pale winter sun, but it feels less like freedom and more like a map of the places you'll be ordered to work next. The break ends with the crack of the steward's voice, and you're back at it, cutting and hauling, your arms trembling with the effort. The weeds and brambles are gathered into piles that will be burned later. For now, the heap grows higher, the smell of dry stems and old earth mixing in the air. You work until your tunic sticks to your back with sweat despite the wind. By afternoon, the task shifts. You're ordered to help patch the walls of the sheep pen. The wattle fencing has come loose in places, and you weave fresh branches between the stakes, pushing them down hard to keep them tight. Your fingers grow numb, and you pause only long enough to blow on them before continuing. The sheep watch you with blank eyes, their breath clouding in the air, their hooves shifting in the dirt. When the pen is secure, the steward sends you to the granary to carry sacks of grain to the loft. Each sack is nearly as heavy as you are, the coarse fabric scratching at your skin through your tunic. You stagger up the narrow ladder, your shoulders screaming, the wooden rungs creaking under your weight. At the top, you drop the sack onto the planks, the dust rising in a choking cloud. Then it's back down for the next load. By the time the sun begins to sink, your muscles feel hollowed out. You think the day might finally be over, but instead you're sent to the kitchens to help prepare the evening meal. You peel onions until your eyes sting, and water sliced turnips, and scrub the soot from the iron pots. The cook doesn't look at you except to gesture toward the next task. The warmth of the hearth is almost unbearable after the wind outside, and your sweat quickly cools, making you shiver even in the heat. When you're finally dismissed, night has fully fallen. The stars are sharp in the clear sky, and the moon casts pale light over the yard. The air smells faintly of smoke from the kitchen fires and the piles of brambles still waiting to be burned. In the quarters, you stretch out on the straw, every joint stiff, your hands rough with cuts and scratches. You can feel the phantom weight of the sickle in your grip and the phantom pull of the grain sacks on your shoulders. Sleep takes you slowly, like water soaking into dry earth. And somewhere in the fog of exhaustion, you realize you've begun to forget the feel of waking up without an order waiting for you. The pasture, the brambles, the grain. They are not just today's work. They are the shape of your life repeating in different forms, year after year, without ever truly changing. The frost has returned overnight, silvering the edges of the grass and making the ground crunch beneath your boots. Your breath puffs in small clouds as you step out into the yard, already knowing the day will be another that carves its mark into your bones. The steward stands near the well, a ledger tucked under his arm, his voice clipped and cold in the morning air. Today's order is simple, in words, brutal in practice. Repair the drainage ditch along the western boundary before the next rain floods the lower fields. You've worked that ditch before. It runs for nearly the length of the pasture, narrow in some places, wide enough for a man to stand in others. The earth walls have collapsed in spots clogged with mud and tangled roots. You begin with the spade, jamming it into the frozen ground. Each cut sends a shock up your arm, and you have to stamp your boot down on the blade to break through the frost. Slowly, the ditch takes shape again, the channel deepening as you lift heavy clods and toss them onto the bank. By mid-morning, your fingers are numb and the cold has worked its way into your knees. You pause to stretch your back, but the steward's shadow falls over you and you force yourself to keep going. A few paces ahead, another slave is hacking at a stubborn root, his breath ragged. You both know there's no point in slowing down. What matters is not how hard you work, but how invisible your fatigue remains. When the channel is finally clear, you move to reinforce the banks with stones gathered from the nearby field. Each one is slick with frost, and more than once your grip slips, the rock thudding into the mud. The stones are heavy, and you can feel the ache spreading through your shoulders and down into your spine. But the wall grows stone by stone until the steward gives a curt nod. The afternoon brings no relief. You're sent to the pigsty to repair a broken gate. The pigs are restless, grunting and pushing against the fence as you work. The smell is thick ammonia and rot, mixed with the sharp scent of wet straw. You nail the planks back into place, your hands clumsy from the cold, the hammer slipping once to smash into your thumb. You bite back a curse, knowing the steward is somewhere nearby. Next, it's the hayloft. The winter feed must be shifted from the far end to the nearer bays, where it will be easier to reach when the snow deepens. You climb the ladder into the dust-heavy air, coughing as you drag bale after bale across the wooden floor. The straw scratches at your arms, the twine bites into your palms, and the dust clings to your damp skin. By the time you climb down again, your throat feels raw. As the light fades, the final order of the day comes. Carry buckets of water from the well to fill the troughs for the cattle and horses. The buckets slosh the water spilling down your sleeves until the fabric freezes stiff in the evening air. The animals drink greedily, their breath steaming their eyes, reflecting the torchlight in the yard. You stand among them for a moment longer than necessary, feeling the heat from their bodies before moving on to the last trough. When you finally return to the quarters, your hands are stiff and red, the skin cracked at the knuckles. You sink onto the straw, the smell of damp earth and animals still clinging to you. Your shoulders feel like stone, your legs heavy as lead. Outside, the wind has picked up, rattling the shutters, and you know it will be even colder by morning. You close your eyes and realize you've begun to forget the shape of an empty day, a day without tasks, without orders, without the weight of someone else's time pressing against your back. That kind of day belongs to another life, one you might have dreamed about long ago, before the ditch, before the gate, before the endless cycle that keeps you here. The cold is sharper today, the kind that seeps into your bones before you've even finished your first breath outside. Frost clings to every surface, the wooden fence rails, the wagon wheels, even the edges of the laundry stiffening on the line. The steward doesn't bother with a long list this morning. He just points toward the stable and says, "The roof's leaking. Fix it before the snow comes." You fetch the ladder and the bundle of wooden shingles from the shed, your hands already aching from the chill. The ladder groans as you climb each rung, slick under your boots. From the roof's edge, the yard looks small and silent, though the smell of smoke from the kitchen chimney drifts up to meet you. You kneel on the damp boards, the cold biting through your knees, and begin prying up the warped shingles. The wind tugs at your cloak, pulling it tight around your throat, and every few minutes you have to stop and warm your fingers with your breath before you can grip the hammer again. When the repairs are done, you climb down slowly, your legs trembling from the strain. But the day has only begun. The steward hands you a broom and sends you to sweep the yard clear of the icy debris that's fallen from the trees overnight. The frost-crusted branches snap under the bristles, scattering chips across the ground. Your breath fogs in the air, the rhythm of sweeping broken only by the crunch of boots as others hurry past on their own errands. By midday, the work shifts to the woodpile. Winter is settling in hard now, and the manor needs more firewood stacked near the kitchens and guest chambers. You take up the axe, its handle worn smooth by years of use, and start splitting logs. Each strike rings through the air, the wood splitting clean or not at all, depending on the grain. Your arms ache quickly, your shoulders tightening with the repetitive motion, but there's no stopping until the pile grows high. Splinters lodge in your palms, and your fingers throb in time with your heartbeat. After the wood is stacked, the steward orders you to carry kindling inside for the kitchen fires. The heat inside the stone walls hits you like a wall so sudden after the cold that it makes your head swim. The cooks barely glance at you, too busy basting meat and stirring pots. The smell of roasting fowl and fresh bread fills the air, and it's almost painful to walk away knowing none of it will touch your lips. In the afternoon, you're sent to help in the lower field, where the fence has been damaged by falling branches. The ground is uneven and partly frozen, making it hard to keep your footing as you haul the heavy wooden posts into place. The hammer blows echo against the cold air, and your breath comes in short bursts as you force the nails into the stubborn wood. Your gloves are too thin to keep out the chill, and by the time the fence stands straight again, your fingertips feel numb and strange as though they belong to someone else. When the sun dips low, you're told to collect water for the horses. The buckets are heavy, the handles biting into your fingers, and the water sloshes cold against your legs. The animals nudge at you impatiently, their breath warm in the dim, stable light. You take a moment to rest a hand on one horse's flank, feeling the solid heat of its body seep into your palm before you step away to finish your rounds. Night settles quickly, the cold deepening until the air feels like glass against your skin. Back in the quarters, you strip off your wet boots, your toes numb and pale. The straw bed offers no real warmth, but you curl into it anyway, pulling the thin blanket tight. Your hands still carry the phantom weight of the axe, the grip of the hammer, the steady lift and fall of the buckets. You think as you drift toward sleep that there's something cruel about the way the work changes, but the exhaustion never does. Whether it's a roof, a fence, or a field, the day always ends the same, with your body emptied out, your strength poured into something that will never bear your name. And tomorrow you'll do it again, as if today never happened at all. The morning begins with a sound you've come to dread, a sharp, insistent knock on the wooden frame, followed by the steward's voice calling your name. There's no time to stretch, no time to shake the stiffness from your limbs. You grab your tunic, still faintly damp from yesterday, and step into the cold. The air is still and heavy, the kind of cold that seems to hold its breath before a storm. Today's task is to clear the snow from the manor's outer paths. It has fallen silently in the night, a thick white layer that hides the uneven ground beneath. You take up the wooden shovel, its edge worn from years of use, and push into the snow. At first it's light enough to move easily, but as the hours pass, the drifts grow heavier, the shovel biting into the packed layers with a dull resistance. Your back bends lower, your breath fogging the air in quick bursts. By mid-morning, the first flakes begin to fall again, soft. At first, then thick, swirling shapes that stick to your eyelashes and coat your shoulders. The steward insists the paths must remain clear, so you keep moving, carving dark lines through the white. The snow finds its way down your collar, melting cold against your skin. Your gloves are damp, and your fingers ache with each grip of the handle. When the paths are finally clear enough, you're ordered to the storage sheds. The Lord's hunting party plans to ride tomorrow, and the gear must be checked and cleaned. You fetch the saddles heavy with age and damp from the cold, and oil the leather until it gleams faintly in the dim light. The bridles are stiff, the buckles frozen. You work them loose with aching fingers, rubbing warmth into the straps as best you can. The smell of leather and oil mixes with the faint scent of hay drifting in from the stable. After the gear is done, the steward sends you to the kitchen garden. Though it's hardly a garden in winter, just rows of frozen ground and withered stalks. Your job is to pull up the last of the dead plants and turn the soil where you can, so it will be ready for spring. The spade bites into the earth reluctantly, the frozen clumps breaking apart, only after you stamp down with all your weight. Each shovelful feels heavier than the last, your shoulders tightening with the effort. By late afternoon, the wind picks up, cutting through your tunic and finding every gap in your clothing. You're called to help stack more firewood in the manor's upper rooms where the guests will stay. You climb the narrow stairs, arms full of split logs, the heat from the fireplace is a stark contrast to the chill outside. The warmth tempts you to linger, but the steward's watchful eyes keep you moving. Evening brings the final task, mucking out the cattle stalls. The air inside is thick with the smell of animals and straw, a damp heat that makes you sweat despite the cold outside. You shovel the muck into piles, spread fresh straw, and check the water troughs. The cattle shift and snort, their large eyes following you in the dim lantern light. You work until your arms feel like lead and the small of your back burns. When you're finally released, the sky outside is deep blue, the moon a thin sliver above the trees. Your boots crunch on the frozen ground as you make your way back to the quarters. Inside the straw bed is cold but familiar. You pull your blanket around you, every muscle heavy, your fingers still tingling from the cold and the work. As your eyes close, you realize that each day blurs into the next, Not because they are identical, but because they all end the same way. Your body drained your mind, dulled your sense of self, slipping away under the weight of duty. Somewhere beyond these walls, the snow will keep falling, and tomorrow you will be out in it again, carving paths that will vanish by morning. The storm came in the night. You wake to the sound of wind rattling the shutters and snow sifting through the cracks in the roof. The air inside the quarters is so cold that your breath hangs above you like a thin mist. You push yourself up the blanket stiff with frost where your damp clothes had touched it. Outside, the world is white fields, trees, roofs, all buried beneath a heavy, unbroken layer. The steward wastes no time. His orders are shouted over the wind. The snow must be cleared from the stable roofs before the weight collapses them. You take up the ladder, its rungs rimed with ice, and make your way to the nearest building. The climb is slow. The ladder sways with each gust, and the cold stings your cheeks until they feel raw. At the top, the drifts are knee-deep, and the snow fights you with every shove of the shovel. It clumps and slides, sometimes tumbling down in heavy slabs that land with muffled thuds below. Your fingers, already numb, struggle to keep their grip. By the time the first roof is clear, your arms are shaking from the effort. But there's no pause. The other roofs need the same work. You move from building to building, your boots filling with snow until your toes lose all feeling. Each gust of wind robs you of your breath, and you lean into it, teeth clenched, as if you can push the cold away. Once the roofs are done, the steward sends you into the woods to gather fallen branches for kindling. The snow is deep, swallowing your legs, with each step the undergrowth hidden beneath. You trip more than once, catching yourself with your hands, the cold biting through the skin. The forest is quiet except for the creak of branches and the distant groan of trees bending under the snow's weight. You pile the wood onto the sled, dragging it back to the manor until the rope digs into your shoulders. The afternoon is spent inside the manor's great hall repairing the drafty shutters. The work should be easier in the warmth, but the cold seeps in through every gap, numbing your fingers as you hammer nails into warped wood. The sound echoes in the vast space, mixing with the crackle of the fire. The Lord sits by the hearth sipping wine, his voice carrying lazily as he gives instructions to the steward. You keep your eyes down, your movements steady, and try not to think about the difference between his day and yours. When the shutters are secured, you're sent to the storage cellar to take inventory of the food supplies. It's dark and cold down there, the air smelling faintly of earth and salt. You count sacks of grain, barrels of ale, and wheels of cheese stacked on wooden shelves. Some are covered in a thin layer of frost. Your stomach growls as you pass them, but you know better than to linger. The ledger must be filled, the steward's pen scratching beside your numbers. As evening falls, the wind howls outside, rattling the doors and sending fine snow through the smallest cracks. You're told to make one last trip to the stable to check on the animals. The lantern light wavers as you step inside, and the sudden warmth from the animals' breath fogs the air. You run your hands along their flanks, feeling the solid weight of them, and make sure their water isn't frozen. The horses nuzzle your shoulder, and for a moment, the steady sound of their breathing eases the cold's grip on you. Back in the quarters, you strip off your sodden boots and lay them near the hearth, though you know they won't be dry by morning. Your clothes are damp and stiff, your fingers aching as you pull the blanket tight. The wind outside is relentless, and you know the snow will only deepen by dawn. As sleep drags at you, you can't help but think that tomorrow will bring the same tasks again. Roofs to clear, paths to dig wood, to gather, each one stealing another piece of the strength you'll need to survive the winter. The snow will not stop for you, and neither will the steward. The snow has eased, but the cold is deeper now, an unmoving, breath-stealing chill that settles into your bones and stays there. When you step outside, the air is so still that every sound carries the creak of the stable door, the crunch of boots on packed snow, the distant caw of a crow overhead. The sun is low, weak, and pale, casting long shadows over the yard. The steward's orders come in short, sharp phrases. The livestock must be moved to the lower barn for shelter, and the path there needs to be cleared first. You take up the shovel again, the wooden handle rough against your raw palms. The snow is packed hard now, heavier than yesterday's powder. Each shovelful lifts like stone, and the path you clear seems to close in again with every gust of drifting snow. Once the path is open, you help herd the animals, cows first, their breath steaming in the frigid air. They move slowly, hooves slipping on the icy ground. You keep your hands low and your voice steady, guiding them toward the warmth of the barn. The sheep are next bunching together in nervous clusters, their wool dusted with frost. The pigs squeal and resist their feet splaying on the snow, forcing you to push and coax them forward. Inside the barn, the air is thick and warm compared to the cold outside, but the smell is strong, damp hay, animal sweat, and manure mingling in a way that clings to your clothes. You spread fresh straw across the floor, your back bent low, the dust making you cough. Then you fill the troughs, breaking the ice that's formed over the water with the back of the shovel. The sound echoes sharply, shards of ice skimming across the surface, before you scoop them out with your hands. By midday, the steward sends you to the smokehouse to help prepare the salted meat for storage. The air inside is dim and pungent, heavy with the smell of smoke and brine. You hang slabs of pork and venison from the rafters, your arms aching from the weight. The salt bites at the cracks in your skin, making your hands sting. You work quietly, your breath mixing with the faint curls of smoke rising from the embers below. In the afternoon, the task changes again, repairs to the granary door. The hinges have rusted, and the wood has warped in the damp, leaving gaps wide enough for a rat to slip through. You hold the planks steady while another slave hammers them into place. The sound rings in your ears, each strike sending a vibration through your numb hands. The work is slow, but the cold outside the granary makes you almost grateful for the chance to stand in one place, even if the chill still gnaws at your feet. As dusk approaches, the sky turns the color of iron, and the first thin flakes begin to fall again. You're sent to haul more firewood to the manor's upper chambers. The stairs are narrow, your arms straining with the load, your breath coming faster with each trip. You can hear faint laughter from behind closed doors, the soft strains of a lute sounds that feel like they belong to a world far beyond your reach. When the last log is in place, you're dismissed. Outside, the snow is falling more steadily now, each flake spinning slowly in the lantern light. The air is silent except for the crunch of your boots as you make your way back to the quarters. You collapse onto the straw bed, your body too heavy to shift. The smell of the smokehouse clings to you, mixing with the scent of animals and sweat. Your hands are raw, your back tight, your legs leaden. Somewhere beyond the walls, the snow will keep falling, and tomorrow you'll step into it again, shovel in hand as though today never happened. And that is the truth of it. You are not building anything here, not for yourself. Every day's work is swallowed whole by the needs of the manor, and your life is measured only by how much you can give before you have nothing left. The snow lies deep now, piled in silent drifts that swallow the lower fences and blur the lines between field and road. You wake to a cold so sharp it makes your teeth ache before you've even left the quarters. The air inside feels heavy, stale, and unmoving. Outside, the world is quiet, except for the crunch of boots and the muffled thud of a shovel somewhere in the yard. The steward's orders are quick but heavy. The well has frozen overnight, and water must be fetched from the stream beyond the edge of the manor grounds. You, and two others are given wooden yokes and buckets, the handles wrapped in stiff leather that does little to keep the cold from biting your fingers. The walk to the stream is slow, the snow deep enough to catch at your knees. Your breath comes in visible bursts, and the cold gnaws at your ears and nose. At the stream, the water's surface is sealed with a crust of ice. You break it with the blunt end of the shovel, the sound sharp in the still air. Fragments scatter across the dark water before drifting to the edges. Filling the buckets is worse. The icy splash stings your hands, and the chill sinks into your bones. Once full, the buckets swing heavily from the yoke, the weight cutting into your shoulders as you trudge back. The water sloshes against the wooden sides, spilling onto your tunic, and freezing almost instantly in the air. Back at the manor, the water is poured into barrels for the kitchens and stables. There's no pause. The next task is waiting. You're sent to the lower fields to dig out the hayricks buried under snow so the livestock will have feed. The hay is stiff and brittle with frost, and your fingers fumble with the cords that bind it. You break it into manageable bundles, stacking them on the sled for the long pull back to the barn. The sled drags heavily over the uneven ground, your legs burning with each step. By midday, your breath feels thick in your chest, the cold air biting every inhale. You're called to the blacksmith's forge to help with repairs to the plows for spring. The forge is sweltering after the cold outside, the heat pressing in on you like a weight. Sweat gathers on your brow, dripping into your eyes as you hold the iron steady for the smith. Sparks leap from the anvil, snapping against your skin. The air is filled with the hiss of metal meeting water, the acrid scent of steam mixing with the forge smoke. When the plows are set aside, the steward sends you to the manor's upper rooms to lay fresh rushes. The floors are swept bare, the old rushes gathered and carted away. You scatter the new bundles by hand, the scent of dried grass briefly masking the stale air. The chambers are warmer than most places in the manor, but they are not yours to linger in. You leave them behind, as pristine as if no one had touched them. Evening falls quickly, the pale light fading to blue shadows. The last task is hauling more wood to the main hall for the night's fire. The logs are heavy and damp from storage, and your arms shake as you stack them near the hearth. The flames there crackle and dance, casting long shadows across the stone walls. For a brief moment you feel the warmth on your skin, but it's only borrowed. The steward's voice calls you away before you can let it settle in. The walk back to the quarters is slow, your steps dragging. The snow has begun again, fine and dry, drifting into the hollows of your footprints. Inside, you strip off your damp clothes and pull the blanket tight around you. Your muscles throb with the steady ache of work done in deep cold, and your hands are rough with small cuts from the day's labor. Lying there, you think about the water from the stream, the hay from the fields, the plows from the forge, the rushes in the upper rooms, all of it given away before it could be yours. Every day's work slips through your fingers like the snow melting on your skin, leaving nothing behind but the ache in your bones. The snow has stopped, but the cold lingers deep, unmoving, and heavy in the air. The morning sky is clear, so clear, it feels almost sharp to look at the pale sun hanging low, as if it doesn't have the strength to rise. You step outside to find the yard already busy, boots crunching in frost voices, calling orders, the muted thump of tools against frozen ground. Today's work begins at the manor wall. The stone has shifted in the freeze, and the steward wants the gaps filled before the wind works them wider. You're given a basket of mortar and a trowel, your fingers already stiff as you start pressing the mixture into the cracks. The cold makes the mortar sluggish, reluctant to spread, and each motion takes more effort than it should. The wall is taller than you can reach in places, so you climb the ladder, the wind sharper as you rise, tugging at your cloak. From up here, the fields stretch out white and empty, and for a moment it feels as though the whole world is locked in ice. When the wall is finished, the steward orders you to the lower barn to help with the threshing. Inside, the air is warmer but thick with the smell of hay and dust. You take up the flail, its wooden arms heavy in your grip, and begin the rhythmic strike against the floor. Grain scatters, husks splitting under the blows, the sound filling the dim space in steady hollow beats. Your shoulders burn quickly, but the work is mindless, almost hypnotic, until the steward calls for you again. This time it's to the manor's pond. The ice there must be broken in measured sections, so water can be drawn for the animals. You use the back of the axe, the blade biting into the frozen surface with a dull crack. Chunks of ice bob in the dark water, and you scoop them aside with your hands until they freeze to your skin. The buckets are filled quickly, but the weight is brutal, the cold water sloshing onto your clothes as you carry them to the troughs. By midday, your stomach aches with hunger, and the bread you're given is hard enough to resist your teeth. You chew slowly, sipping from a flask of water that tastes faintly of the wood it was stored in. Around you, the others eat in silence, their faces turned away from the wind. The afternoon brings a task that grinds the last of your strength, moving sacks of grain from the storage shed to the main hall for the winter feast preparations. Each sack is a dead weight on your shoulders, the coarse fabric scraping your skin raw. You haul them up the steps, your breath ragged, your vision narrowing to the stretch of stone in front of you. In the hall, the servants take them without a word, setting them in neat stacks near the kitchen door. As evening comes, you're sent one last time to the stables to help spread fresh straw. The air inside is warm and thick, the animals shifting in their stalls, their eyes glinting in the lantern light. You move slowly now, your arms heavy, your hands clumsy. The straw rustles underfoot, the smell of it mingling with the musky heat of the animals. When the steward finally dismisses you, the sky outside is deep blue, fading to black, the stars sharp and bright. You walk back to the quarters, the frost crunching under your boots, the cold biting at your ears and fingers. Inside, the air is still frigid, but it's a relief to lie down. The straw bed cradles your aching limbs, and you pull the blanket close, shutting your eyes against the dim flicker of the hearth. In the darkness, you realize this is how the years pass, one day bleeding into the next. Each task different in shape, but the same in weight. The seasons change, the work shifts with them, but the rhythm never breaks. You are a constant, not in freedom, but in servitude. And in this life, even rest is only the brief space between orders. The day is done, though it never truly ends here. The frost outside glitters faintly in the moonlight, the still air holding the cold like a secret. The manor is quiet now, the last embers in the hearths giving off a low, sleepy glow. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, once then falls silent again. You lie in the straw, every muscle heavy, the faint scent of hay rising with each breath. The sounds of the day boots on snow, the dull thud of the flail, the scrape of the shovel, still echo faintly in your mind. But they are softened now, blurred at the edges. Your hands rest still for the first time since morning, the raw skin cooling the ache in your shoulders, easing just a little. The darkness in the corners of the room is deep and quiet, the kind of quiet that wraps around you like another blanket. The cold is still there, but you've grown used to it, your body sinking into the stillness. Outside, the stars seem almost close enough to touch, bright and sharp against the endless black. You listen to the breathing of those around you, slow and steady, each rise and fall like a tide rolling in and out. The rhythm is calming, like the hush of wind through the trees, or the distant rush of water under ice. Your own breath begins to match it slower, deeper, as your thoughts grow soft and heavy. The work will wait for you tomorrow, as it always does. But for now, there is only this moment, this small pocket of stillness in a life that rarely stops moving. Let the day fall away. Let the cold drift into the background. Let your eyes close and sink slowly into the dark.